There's a clock on the wall, or maybe it's on your phone screen, your microwave, the corner of your monitor. It's relentless, indifferent, a steady, unblinking metronome counting down, well, everything. We live inside its current, pushed forward second by second, minute by minute. There's no pause button for reality, no rewind for that clumsy word, that missed opportunity, that moment you wish you could just hold, freeze, examine from every angle before letting it play out. But then there are games, digital worlds where time isn't always a fixed law. Sometimes it's a currency, sometimes it's a weapon, sometimes it's a cage, and sometimes it's clay in your hands. Video games, maybe more than any other medium, let us play with time. They let us stop it, scrutinize it, bend it to our will, or feel crushed beneath its artificial weight. I remember the first time I played Majora's Mask, not just the ticking clock in the corner, but that feeling. The low, oppressive hum of dread as the moon glared down, those final hours slipping away. It wasn't just a timer. It felt like a tangible weight, a knot in my stomach tightening with every chime. That anxiety was crafted, deliberate, a manipulation not just of the game's clock, but of my own pulse. And that's what I want to explore. The clocks inside the machine. How do video games use time, not just as a setting, but as a mechanic? A narrative device, a source of friction or fantasy. From the godlike power of rewinding a fatal mistake, to repeating loops where knowledge is the only thing that survives the reset. How does manipulating virtual time change how we feel, how we play, and maybe even how we think about the real, unyielding tick-tock waiting for us when we put the controller down? Allow me to borrow some of your time, and let's take a closer look. Games grant us passage into these worlds where the clock can be different, but perhaps the most immediate, most visceral way they do this is by handing us the controls to the second hand itself. Not manipulating grand timelines or repeating history, but twisting the very fabric of the present moment. This is time as a tool, time as a shield, time as a magnifying glass. Take the rewind. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time didn't invent it, but it certainly popularized it as a core mechanic. From a design perspective, it's fascinating. It serves as an elegant difficulty mitigator, a way to smooth out the sharp edges of failure in a demanding platformer. Instead of a hard game over screen and a long reload, a mistake becomes a momentary setback, instantly undone. This dramatically alters the learning curve and the pacing. The designers allow for more complex, riskier traversal challenges precisely because the cost of failure is softened by the dagger of time. But compare that to Braid. Here, the rewind isn't just a safety net, it is the puzzle. Jonathan Blow integrated the manipulation of time directly into the game's logic. Platforms might move differently in reverse, enemies might respawn, keys might only be obtainable by playing events forwards and backwards. It's less about correcting player error and more about understanding time as a fundamental rule of the game world, ripe for exploitation. The design cleverly forces players to think temporally, analyzing cause and effect across reversible timelines. The feeling shifts from relief, as in Prince of Persia, to intellectual satisfaction when the temporal solution clicks. Then there's slowing time down. Bullet time in Max Payne wasn't just stylish, though it was incredibly stylish. It was a functional design choice addressing the difficulty of aiming precisely in chaotic, fast-paced third-person shootouts, especially on consoles back in the day. By stretching out milliseconds, the game empowers the player, transforming overwhelming odds into a manageable, almost balletic challenge. It enhances the core shooting mechanic by giving the player more time to react, aim, and execute. Superhot takes this concept and warps it into its central pillar. Time barely crawls unless the player acts. Suddenly, slow motion isn't a limited power-up, it's the default state of the world, contingent entirely on player input. Each twitch, each step, each shot requires deliberation. The design forces a constant, rapid risk-reward calculation. It's less about feeling powerful in a cinematic way like Max Payne, and more about feeling like a hyper-aware tactician, navigating a lethal crystalline puzzle box. And of course, there's the simplest manipulation, stopping time altogether. The pause screen. Mundane, maybe, but critical. Beyond just letting us grab a drink, tactile pauses in games like Baldur's Gate or FTL are crucial design elements. They allow for complex systems, multiple characters, abilities, intricate enemy AI to be manageable. The designers grant players a pocket of zero time to assess, plan, and issue orders, layering strategic depth onto real-time chaos. The absence of a pause function, famously in the likes of the Souls series, is an equally potent design choice, committing fully to relentless forward momentum and forcing players to make split-second decisions under immense pressure. Rewind, slow motion, pause. These aren't just features bolted onto existing frameworks, they are fundamental design choices that reshape the player's interaction with the game world at the most granular level. They alter pacing, difficulty, skill expression, and the very feel of moment-to-moment play. They cater to the deeply human desire to exert control over the fleeting present, to perfect an action, to analyze a threat, or simply to catch our breath before the clock starts ticking again. But what happens when time isn't just bent or stopped, but broken, forced into a loop? Controlling the moment gives us power, precision, but what happens when that control is warped? When time stops flowing forward altogether and instead snaps back, forcing us to relive the same moments, the same days, the same countdowns over and over. This is the time loop. A narrative structure, yes, but more importantly, a powerful and often unsettling game mechanic. Perhaps no game has infused its loop with such a palpable dread as The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Dropped into Termina, you have just 3 days before the moon crashes down, obliterating everything. Your only recourse? To play the Song of Time, resetting the clock but losing most consumables and resetting the world state. From a design standpoint, this loop is deliberately oppressive. It creates constant tension via the deadline. It forces efficiency and route optimization. You simply can't do everything or save everyone in a single cycle, at least normally. But the true weight comes from the emotional toll. You witness the same anxieties, the same hopes, the same doomed plans of Clocktown's inhabitants again and again. You can intervene, create small pockets of happiness, but the reset washes it all away. The loop here isn't a playground, it's a cage, built of impending loss, forcing the player to confront themes of grief, acceptance, and the struggle for meaning in the face of inevitability. It feels melancholic, even desperate. Contrast that existential weight with the slick, violent puzzle box of Deathloop. Here, the time loop trapping cold on Black Reef is less a source of dread and more an opportunity. The island is a playground, albeit a deadly one. The design goal shifts from managing loss to enabling mastery. Each loop is a chance to gather intel, leads about the visionaries, their schedule, their weaknesses, and how their routines intersect. The loop facilitates experimentation. Failure isn't punished so much as it offers new data. How can you manipulate events in the morning to set up a perfect chain of assassinations by nightfall? Knowledge is power, directly translated into gameplay progression. Infusing weapons and abilities allows for tangible carryover, reducing the sting of the reset compared to Majora's strict rules. Arcane designed the loop as a framework for their signature immersive sim gameplay. Complex systems interacting, multiple solutions to problems, environmental storytelling. The rivalry with Juliana adds another dynamic layer, turning the loop into a deadly game of cat and mouse within the larger temporal puzzle. The feeling here isn't dread, but a kind of determined, stylish competence, cracking the code one loop at a time. And then there's Outer Wilds, a game where the 22-minute time loop isn't a punishment, nor strictly a puzzle to be solved in the traditional sense, but the fundamental mechanism for discovery. You aren't getting stronger, finding better gear, or even directly manipulating the loop itself. Your only persistent progression is knowledge, meticulously recorded in your ship's log. Each cycle is an expedition. Maybe this time you follow the clues to the Hang City. Maybe you decipher a piece of Nomai text just before the supernova wipes the slate clean. The design brilliance here is how the loop encourages curiosity and makes a vast, intricate solar system digestible. The short duration forces focused exploration. The reset ensures you can always try a different path without long-term consequences to your physical state. It reframes failure. Dying isn't losing progress, it's simply the end of one information gathering run. The loop creates a unique blend of urgency, the ticking clock to the sun's explosion, and serenity, the freedom to explore. The feeling isn't dread or empowerment, but a profound sense of wonder, mystery, and perhaps a touch of cosmic sadness as you piece together the story of a lost civilization and the universe's fate. Majora's Mask, Deathloop, Outer Wilds, 3 distinct takes on the time loop. What connects them is the transformation of repetition from potential tedium into a core mechanic. They leverage the loop to structure gameplay, gate progression through knowledge rather than keys, and explore complex themes, inevitability, causality, the nature of learning itself. We, the players, become Sisyphus, pushing the boulder up the hill, but sometimes we're learning exactly where to place our feet so the next push is easier. Or perhaps we're just learning to appreciate the view on the way up, knowing the reset is coming. But time in games isn't always spinning in circles or bending in the moment. Sometimes it stretches out, vast and indifferent. If the previous mechanics let us bend or break time's immediate flow within seconds, minutes, or tightly repeating cycles, other games expand our temporal horizons, asking us to engage with time over much longer durations. Here, the focus shifts to the scale of seasons, years, generations, historical epics, or the immense weight of ancient pasts. This is macro time. Time experienced as history, as legacy, as the slow, inevitable creep of change or decay. For instance, the grand strategy genre, epitomized by games like Civilization. Here, time is compressed into turns, each one potentially representing years. History itself becomes the canvas. The design focus is on managing resources, guiding development, and steering a society across vast epics. You witness and direct the birth and potential death of empires. It's a god's eye view, often detached, where individual lives are abstracted into population counts and unit stats. The feeling is one of immense scope, of strategic foresight, where decisions made now ripple across simulated centuries. You're not just living in time, you're attempting to sculpt its flow on a massive scale. But vast time isn't always about player control. Sometimes it's about the weight of what came before. Look at the worlds From Software builds in Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or Elden Ring. Time here is less a thing you manage and more a force whose effects you explore. These aren't games about history in the making, they are games set within the deep, often decaying strata of history. The design communicates this immense passage of time primarily through environmental storytelling. The ruins, the enemy designs, the sparse, cryptic lore gleaned from item descriptions. You aren't building an empire, you're picking through the bones of fallen ones, trying to piece together cycles of rise and fall, of gods and kings long dead or corrupted. The feeling here is often one of melancholy, of insignificance against the backdrop of ages. The player is a latecomer to a world already saturated with its own forgotten past. The grandeur is faded, the triumphs are myths. The game design leverages this deep time to create atmosphere, mystery, and a pervasive sense of entropy. Post-apocalyptic games offer another lens on macro time, focusing specifically on the contrast between a before and an after. Games like The Last of Us or Horizon Zero Dawn meticulously craft environments where nature is reclaiming the remnants of a lost civilization. Time's passage is marked by rust, decay, and regrowth. The narrative often revolves around understanding the cataclysm that caused the break, exploring how the past haunts the present. The design uses the relics of the old world, decaying buildings, corrupted machines, fragmented data logs, to tell stories of loss and survival. It's time measured in the gap between what was and what is. And yet, vast time doesn't always have to mean decay or conflict. There's also the quiet persistence of time in games like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley. Often linked to the real-world clock or steady seasonal cycles, time here is gentle, nurturing. It's measured in the slow growth of crops, the changing leaves, the gradual deepening of relationships with villagers. The design encourages patience and long-term investment. There's no grand historical arc to manage, no ancient catastrophe to uncover, just the steady, comforting rhythm of days turning into seasons, seasons into years. It represents time as routine, as stability, as the framework for building a virtual life, moment by moment over the long haul. From the strategic sweep of simulated centuries to the gentle rhythm of digital seasons, games use macro time to shape our perspective. It can make us feel powerful, insignificant, nostalgic, or comforted. It can be a resource to manage, a mystery to unravel, or simply the quiet background hum against which our virtual lives unfold. It reminds us that the moments we control, the loops we repeat, are often just small eddies in a much larger current. But through all these manipulations, the pauses, the rewinds, the loops, the passing of generations, there's one clock that never stops ticking: our own. So we wind back the seconds, trap ourselves in repeating days, or watch virtual empires crumble over simulated millennia. We become masters of the moment, explorers of causality, architects of digital history. We wield time like a tool, break it like a puzzle box, or simply let its gentle current carry us through pixelated seasons. But eventually, inevitably, we have to put the controller down. And the clock on the wall, the one that was always there, ticking away just outside the screen's glow, comes back into focus. Its time is inflexible. No sands of time to undo a slip of the tongue, no 3-day cycle to perfect a conversation, no ship's log preserving the insights gained just before a real-world deadline hits. The hours we spent bending virtual timelines were themselves spent within the unyielding flow of our own. What does it mean then, this fascination? Why do we invest so much of our finite time in these temporal playgrounds? Perhaps it's practice, a safe space to grapple with consequence, pattern recognition, and long-term planning, skills vital outside the game. The rewind mechanic shores up our fear of irreversible mistakes. The time loop offers a fantasy of eventual mastery through repetition, turning frustration into understanding. The grand strategy game lets us touch a sense of scale and legacy often absent from daily life. From a design perspective, these temporal mechanics are powerful because they tap into something fundamentally human. They offer structured ways to engage with concepts that are often overwhelming in reality. They provide satisfying feedback loops, turning the abstract nature of time into tangible systems we can learn and manipulate. They allow developers to craft specific emotional responses, anxiety, empowerment, wonder, melancholy, by carefully tuning the rules of their clocks. And there's nostalgia too. Revisiting a game years later isn't just playing again, it's a form of personal time travel. We reconnect with a past version of ourselves, the one who first navigated these digital moments. The game world might be static, frozen in its code, but we have changed. Passage of our own time reframes the experience. Video games, in their unique interactivity, don't just tell stories about time, they allow us to experience it, to wrestle with it in ways impossible anywhere else. They are clocks within machines, reflecting and refracting our own complex relationship with the hours we have. Is it escapism? Certainly, sometimes, but maybe it's also more than that. Maybe it's exploration, a way to momentarily step outside the current, to feel the contours of time differently, and perhaps, just perhaps, to return to our own relentless clock with a slightly altered perspective. We borrow time from the machine, measure our lives in frames and loops, and in doing so, find new ways to understand the value of the moments that tick by unstoppably outside the screen.